Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my channel. This is my first video on here, so I do want to start out with my absolute all-time favorite movie, Project Hail Mary. This movie is so stunning in both the cinematography and the storytelling. It is such a beautiful representation of human nature and what we're willing to do to survive. I think it balances humor with serious topics such as friendship and betrayal so incredibly well. So, alright, let's get started. There are a few important symbols throughout the movie. One major one is the symbolism of rainbows. In Project Hail Mary, rainbows represent change and are seen in scenes such as when Stratt first comes to talk to Grace, when Rocky and Grace fly to Adrian, and when Grace sees Rocky's ship for the first time. When Grace sees the rainbows on Rocky's ship, it takes him back to when he was pinned down against his will and forced to go on the mission. Obviously, this is a major shift in the movie, as it shows the truth of what happened to Grace before he went on the mission. Another symbol that is shown multiple times throughout the movie is Grace's fox sweater, which represents comfort or safety. He's seen wearing it when he first begins to help Stratt, but he isn't seen wearing it again until the karaoke scene. These are both scenes in which Grace feels more comfortable than he does throughout the rest of the movie. He is also seen wearing it at the beginning of his time on the Hail Mary ship, which shows his search for comfort and safety when he didn't know what was going on. And then he finally wears it for the last time again on Arid. Arid is where Grace finally found his family and his home, which he was never able to truly find on Earth. Of course, there's more symbolism throughout the movie, but these are the symbolisms that I personally chose to discuss. The characters in this movie are also done so incredibly well. Stratt's character especially. She's shown in the beginning to be strict and controlling, but she slowly opens up to Grace as the movie progresses. She puts on a mask of power and strength, but in reality, she sacrifices much more than people think. She cared about Grace, and choosing to send him, knowing what it would do to him, was an incredibly difficult choice she had to make. I also love how complex her character is, because even though obviously sending Grace was the right choice, it still manages to feel like a betrayal of the trust that we began to feel. Her character is built up in such a way that something can be the obvious choice that she would make and still feel like a surprise and betrayal when she actually does make that choice. Grace is also characterized extremely well. It's very clear that he cares deeply about what he does. He puts everything into things, even when it seems unconventional. Also, I think it's amazing that Grace's teacher instincts are so noticeable when he first begins interacting with Rocky. It truly shows how much he has a passion for teaching that it really sticks with him in all situations. This is also demonstrated when he became a teacher on Arid. Rocky's character is also very, very special. He is always shown to be on the same, if not higher, emotional and intelligence level as Grace. He clearly cares very deeply and strongly, as he's willing to sacrifice his entire mission just to save Grace. Finally, I absolutely love how the other astronauts are also characterized in this movie. They are so incredibly brave and strong and passionate about what they do, but they still allow themselves to enjoy life. The karaoke scene was truly beautiful, and the connection within the crew felt so powerful in that moment. Obviously, there's a theme of bravery throughout the movie, and what it means to be brave. Grace shows bravery as something you do when you're too scared to even think about it. Commander Yao shows bravery as doing the right thing for others, even if it hurts you in the process. Rocky shows bravery as pushing through even when things change unexpectedly. Ilyukna shows bravery as always being strong, even in situations where it might feel hard. Stratt shows bravery as doing what needs to be done, no matter the consequences it may bring. There are so many incredible representations of bravery within this movie, and I think it's really special to see different characters being brave in different ways. Another reoccurring theme is the idea, or rather, the question of what it means to be home. Grace is terrified of going on the mission, and not only because he's scared of dying, but because it would also mean leaving the only home and place he's ever known and knowing that he would never come back. Many people talk about the death aspect of the Hail Mary, but I feel like it's not as discussed that these characters had to be okay with leaving their home knowing that they would never set foot on Earth again. This is also an extremely difficult thing to ask of someone, and yet still multiple characters agree to do it because of their desire to protect their home, even if they won't be there to see it. This movie also, of course, demonstrates the age-old idea that home is not a place, but a feeling. Grace feels at home on Arid, even though it is an alien planet with not a single human, but it becomes home for him because of the people or aliens there. Both Rocky and Adrian are shown to be extremely caring of Grace, and I love that he got to experience those connections on Arid that he never truly got to have on Earth. I also absolutely love how this movie shows that multiple things can be true at once. Something can be a betrayal and still be the totally right thing to do. Grace also realizes this later in the movie when he says, "At least I don't have to hear you say I told you so, even though you were right." He knew that Stratt betrayed him, and he still felt incredibly betrayed by her choice, but he understood that it was really the only choice she could make in that situation. I wanted to do a separate section for Grace because he means so much to me. He's an awkward loser who's still extremely likable. It's very clear how much he cares about his kids and honestly everyone around him. The other characters were very quick to fall on the same wavelength as him, showing his willingness to work with others and bounce ideas off each other. He was also extremely creative and clearly took his research seriously. I think a lot of people see themselves in Grace because he doesn't really believe in himself, even when everyone around him can see how capable he is. I think it's beautiful that he represents so many different parts of a person, and that makes him relatable to a lot of people. He clearly uses humor as a defense while still allowing himself to be vulnerable when he needs to be. I also would like to go a little bit deeper into Stratt's character. She is another extremely important character, not only to the story, but to media in general. She is very complex, and there are so many different sides to her. Personally, I could never hate her. While I don't like that she sent Grace to space the way she did, I understand why she did it, and I would have done the same thing in her situation. She is shown as this super strong, powerful woman, but it's also shown how much she is really willing to sacrifice for this mission to work. She understands that sending Grace will have consequences, but she's still willing to do it because she understands that the alternative is so much worse. I love the way her character is written, and I love how she proves that almost all situations are a lot more complicated than just black and white. The scene where she sends Grace, she is very clearly conflicted and upset about having to make that choice. She knows it'll hurt Grace, and she still chooses to do it. This scene also shows how something can be the totally right thing to do and still hurt others in the process. She did betray Grace, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend she didn't, but it was still the necessary choice to ensure the survival of Earth. Another important part of her character is that she can't get too sentimental or attached to people, but she still does. She very clearly cares about Grace, as shown in how upset she is to see him go. They also have a few moments of connection earlier in the story. For example, when they're talking about singing, and also when they're walking together to discuss plans. Firstly, I think Rocky imitating Grace's movements when they first meet was absolutely adorable. It really shows that Rocky is trying to connect with Grace on some level, while also trying to show him that he's not there to hurt him. Also, Rocky watching Grace sleep is so important, because it shows how quickly Rocky saw him as a friend, or even as part of his own kind. He does it to care for Grace, even when they haven't known each other that long. It is also beautiful that Grace allows this to happen when he sees how much it means to Rocky. At first, he's unsure and he calls it weird, but then he sees how worried Rocky is, and he chooses to allow Rocky that little bit of comfort. Also, Rocky leaves the safety of his atmosphere to save Grace. Not only could this have killed Rocky, but if Rocky had died, all of Arid would have died as well. I mean, he was smart enough to understand the consequences of his actions, yet he was still willing to make that sacrifice for a friend he had, I guess you could say, just met. Grace also makes an incredibly difficult choice when he chooses to go back for Rocky. He had just accepted and truly realized that he might survive this mission when he made the choice to die for his friend. Another thing about them that is really meaningful is that they both got to make up for their biggest regrets. Grace regretted being too scared to go on the mission, and he felt like a coward for not going, but he went back for Rocky, which shows huge character growth. Rocky regretted the fact that his crew died and he couldn't do anything, so he gave Grace that one last chance. Colors are used throughout the entire movie to showcase emotion and convey ideas that might be a little less clear. One example is the fact that the colors on Earth are a lot more muted than the colors in space. This includes the colors aboard the Hail Mary as well. The lighting is much brighter and has a yellow hue instead of a blue hue. This helps to show how Grace never really felt at home or like he fit in back on Earth. While he didn't want to be in space, it was still the place that he felt the most like himself. This is also shown in his classroom, which is so much brighter than the rest of Earth. It shows another piece of him that's not very clear when he's on Earth. It is very clear though when he befriends Rocky. The details in this movie are so well thought out. I want to discuss some of my favorites that truly add so much to the story. One example is the detail of Grace's personal belongings having his name written in Sharpie rather than the embroidered patch that the others had. It really helps foreshadow the fact that Grace was never really part of the plan. Another thing I noticed is that the other characters each had pictures with their friends and family, but Grace only has one picture of himself. This shows how lonely Grace was before the mission and shows how little he truly knew about himself. Another small detail that really sticks out to me is the little good luck scribbled inside his sleeping bag. Also, Grace's glasses and how he wears them is a really good representation of his character in general. Yes, even though they came about because of Ryan Gosling. It shows Grace as someone who doesn't really follow societal expectations or norms and still does whatever works for him. I love how many times this movie mirrors or repeats itself. It gives the movie a real sense of closure when it's finished. First, Stratt tells Grace, "You're smart, you'll figure it out," when she explains that he's the one who needs to go to space. I love how Grace can take this line and put a positive spin on it when he's sending the samples back to Earth. It shows how he uses Stratt's own words against her while still having immense respect for her as a person. Next, the first scene of the movie almost mirrors how the entire movie is going to go. It starts lighthearted and fun, but quickly turns dark when he finds the rest of his crew dead. The rest of the movie kind of builds upon the same format, as when Grace and Rocky struggle to connect the Taumiba, it shows a very clear shift in the movie. Another little foreshadowing moment is when Grace finally sees himself happy in the mental health node before he even reaches Tau Ceti. It gives the audience a feeling of hope, even if they don't truly know what it means at the time. I truly think rewatching the movie and seeing that scene and understanding what it means is really, really beautiful. Another little thing that repeats is the question of, can I think about it? Grace first asks this question when Stratt tells him he needs to go to space. She responds that he only has a short amount of time because she needs him for this mission to work. The other time he asks this question is when Rocky tells him that Grace can go home to Earth. The only difference is this time Rocky tells him to think about it for a long time. This shows the difference between the two characters very clear. Stratt needed him to decide quickly because she needed him to leave, while Rocky wanted him to take a long time because he wanted him to stay. Finally, I want to discuss perhaps the most obvious mirrored scene in the entire movie. What is the speed of light? Obviously, he asks his students this on Earth when he is first seen inside his classroom. This shows that the one similarity from Grace's old life to his new life is teaching, his only true passion. This is so important because it shows how deeply he cares about teaching and his students. It shows how he only really had one part of his life that he wanted to keep. This is my all-time favorite movie, and I'm not afraid to admit it. The visuals were absolutely stunning, and all the characters have such a special place in my heart. I love the anyone can be a hero vibes that it brings, and the message that we all can find some reason to be brave. It also shows the message of giving it all we got in all situations. We all need to be like Ryland Grace, able to rise to the challenge, even when it's scary, even when it seems impossible, even when we feel utterly alone, and especially when it helps others.